Dad died at 6 a.m. By noon, my brother-in-law handed me a folder. The company is sold, you get nothing. I drove to my attorney. She saw the forged signature and said, call the FBI now. I hadn't picked out a funeral home yet. I was still in the clothes I'd slept in, sitting at the kitchen table with my father's phone in my hand because I couldn't make myself turn it off when Mark knocked, my sister's husband, suit pressed, tie straight, like he'd been dressing for this exact moment for years. He didn't say he was sorry. He didn't ask how I was holding up. Dad had been gone 6 hours and Mark was already dressed like a man walking into a closing, not awake. He just held out a manila folder and said, Dad wanted this settled quickly. This is your copy for your records. I stood in the doorway looking at him, at the folder, at the fact that my father had been dead 6 hours and somebody had already had time to print things out. Settled, I said. Settled how? The company's being sold, he said, like he was reading me a weather report. There's a buyer lined up. Everybody comes out ahead. I opened it right there on the porch. Dad's company. Reyes Auto and Diesel. 31 years. The shop where I'd learned to read a torque spec before I could drive. A purchase agreement was inside, already signed. My sister's signature. Mark's, listed as some kind of advisor. Under my name, nothing. A blank line and a sticky note that said, sign here when ready. There's no number on this that says what I get, I told him. He smiled the way he always smiled when he thought he was being patient with someone slower than him. That's still being worked out. But your dad wanted this done, he told me himself. I didn't argue on the porch. I took the folder inside, sat back down at that table, and called my sister before I called anyone else. It rang twice and went to voicemail. I called again 10 minutes later. Same thing. I told myself she was probably asleep, or too wrecked to talk, or driving. I didn't let myself think about the fact that her signature was already sitting right there on the page in front of me, dry and finished, like she'd had all the time in the world. I looked at a signature that was supposed to be my father's. Something about it bothered me before I could say why. I'd watched him sign things for 2 years after his surgery. His hand shook, enough that he'd switched almost everything over to typed initials because holding a pen made his fingers cramp. The line on this page didn't shake at all. It was smooth, confident. It looked like his handwriting from before he got sick, like somebody had pulled it out of an old drawer. I called Eleanor the next morning. She'd handled Dad's business since before I was old enough to work the front counter. I slid the folder across her desk and said, Mark brought this by yesterday, hours after. She read the first page. Then she went quiet in a way I hadn't heard from her before. She held the signature up to the window, tilted it, set it back down. This isn't right, she said. She pulled an old service contract Dad had signed 8 months before he died and set it beside the folder. Look at these together. I didn't need to be a handwriting expert. The old signature trembled across the page, letters drifting off the line. The new one was clean, steady, too steady. Your father's hand shook every time he signed anything for 2 years, Eleanor said. This doesn't shake at all. Maybe he had a good day. Nobody has a good day like this, she said, no comfort in her voice. This was traced. Somebody had an old signature of his on file and copied it onto this page. I sat there and let that settle into my chest the way cold water does. My father hadn't signed away his own company hours before he died. Somebody had taken his hand from before he got sick and set it down on a document he never saw, never touched, never agreed to. Who would even think to do that? I asked her. She didn't answer. She just looked at the folder the way you look at something once you already know what it is and you're only confirming it out of formality. Then she reached for her office phone. Eleanor, what are you doing? My job, she said, and dialed. She didn't call the police first. She said one sentence to whoever picked up. I need to report a fraudulent estate document tied to an ongoing sale. Get me the FBI's field office. She covered the receiver and looked at me. Don't sign anything else. Don't answer any calls from Mark or your sister without me in this room. Not one. I nodded because I couldn't get words out yet. Down the hall, a phone picked up, and her voice went low and careful. I sat there with the folder still open, staring at a signature that wore my father's name like a mask stitched